out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Good day to you, Tim.
Oh my, you startled me.
Appropriate. Mm-hmm. I guess I could say that every episode because this is a horror podcast.
Yeah.
And good day to you. Yes, you. Yes.
Specifically, you.
Correct. You. Welcome to episode 61.
In honor of you, I'm cracking a undisclosed beverage from a can.
Hint, it's 10:33 a.m. at the time of the cracking of the can.
It's not a beer.
But it's great because you have your fisherman's hoodie today.
Mama needs her juice.
Yeah, and her rose hip water or whatever.
Orange hip water?
Orange hip water,
Whatever.
I think it was. We'll get to that. Okay. I had made it to saying welcome to episode 61 of Dismembering Horror.
That's the show.
That's the show. It's the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie,
And myself, Tim Aslin.
we dismember a horror film every week, every Thursday. In fact, coming straight to your ears. And what does it mean to dismember a horror film?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I'll tell you. It means we watch a film, a horror film,
Yep.
and we talk about what worked, what did not work, and anything we found interesting or noteworthy.
That sounds about right.
And we're hoping we get to just cover some new, exciting, unknown ground as far as from Tim and mine's perspective.
We just dive right into that made-for-TV land this week.
Yep. It's a place you gotta go sometimes because it counts.
Yeah, it does. It does count. It exists.
And we're continuing on with our Psycho films for October 2019.
Oh, yeah.
This has been great.
Yeah.
The continuing adventures and misadventures of one Norman Bates.
Poor Norman.
Yeah, exactly. Hearing you say poor Norman every time, it's so good. Oh, Norman.
He's really had quite a go of it.
Yeah, he's had quite a unique life. It's kind of went by before our very eyes in the time span of watching these films.
Yeah.
And we hope you've watched it.
Yeah, we do.
Because then you'll be in on the conversation versus just in/out of the conversation.
Just listening to us talk about
But that's fine.
thing you don't know about.
That's really fine.
You can do that too.
Yeah,
It's
I know
okay.
people do that with this, and that's great. That should excite us too.
I will say real quick, my buddy Billy came up to me recently. He's like, dude, I've been listening. I looked through the list of movies that you guys had, and I looked for ones that I knew and had seen, and then I listened to it, the ones that I had watched, and it's so good. And I was like, yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Thanks, Billy. You got it.
Great. Yeah, no,
He loved Phenomena.
Awesome. Cool. Cool.
I know.
I like Billy then.
Yeah, Billy's the man.
Yeah, no, actually that is a part of the show is we hope to kind of there's a fun of sort of cataloging a horror film after you've seen it. How do we store it in our memory energy banks? That's the other prong of what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. The other goal. Yeah. Anything else to catch up with? We've done Psycho 2 and 3. We're about to talk about 4. You know what?
I don't think
I was listening to Psycho 2, our episode, and editing that, and kind of when I had to follow up with you about, what was your ghost story, Tim? I would feel left out if you didn't fill us in on the ghost story. I asked you about what the film was you just made, but I have no clue
what it is?
Is it?
Oh.
What is it, and what is it about, real quick?
It's a little inside baseball, but it's a satire about an actress who is struggling, like a mid late 20s actress who's struggling to sort of get her career going. So she has hired a man to quote unquote stalk her, to kind of raise her profile out in the world to make, get more followers and make it more exciting. So that kind of thing. But the story is that she learns that her hired stalker is double dipping with an older actress, and he's stalking her as well, even though they had an exclusive contract. And then it sort of becomes this, the older celebrity actress shows up, and it becomes this sort of triangle of like who's gonna get the who's gonna get the stalker in the end.
Cool. And it's a short film?
Yeah, it's a short. It's like, it'll probably end up being about 12 minutes, I'd guess.
Kind of like a black comedy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Great.
But it's fun. Like I said whenever we talked about it before, it's modern, but we play it out sort of like a Western. So instead of like the celebrity riding in on a horse, she rides in on a motorcycle and, that kind of thing. It's all shot from the hip. It's cool.
Great. All right. Well, keep us posted. We're just curious what it was since you didn't actually say.
Yeah. It's called Two Timers.
Cool. All right. And this film is our one Psycho film that has a subtitle, Psycho 4, The Beginning, which I think was appropriate. Now, should we go on and watch the trailer? Are you ready for Psycho 4, The Beginning?
I mean, I'm as ready as I was when we turned it on the other night.
Great. I'll say it again. Third, maybe, okay, no, I'll say it 2 more times because 4 times is the charm of this one. We're going to watch Psycho 4, The Beginning, Psycho 4, The Beginning.
In 1960, Alfred Hitchcock created a film that is perhaps the most terrifying thriller of all time. Psycho. Now, come answers to the questions audiences have been asking for over 30 years. Psycho 4, The Beginning.
This is Fran Ambrose on KTK, Talk of the Town.
I called because the focus of your show tonight is what makes boys kill their mothers.
Are you saying you killed your mother?
I killed some other women, too.
You want to tell us about your mother, how she drove you to become what you became?
She'd be sweet one moment, and then she'd suddenly turn mean. Don't you have any respect for the dead?
How did it all start?
What are you doing here?
We're gonna wake up your mother.
Kill her.
I can't, no!
Then I'll do
Oh, boy.
Was that your rating of it?
Oh, boy.
Can you translate that oh boy from our scale into our rating scale of, would you tell yourself, Tim, to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
I would tell myself that never has there been a more streamable movie for myself. That's as far as I can go.
Great. I'll admit, Tim, this one, I already know if you've been listening, I'm a big fan of these films. And just by being a Psycho film, here's the thing. I already said buy it to the other 3. I mean, of course, we haven't done the first one yet, but of course. If the first 3 are on my shelf, I'm gonna complete it, But I will admit that if this was outside of the Psycho movies, and I didn't already quote unquote own the other 3, it'd be a rent it.
Yeah.
For me.
Okay.
How I kind of my review in summary is it's a really good TV movie. And if 2 and 3 are better than we expected a second and third movie in a series to be, 4 at least keeps up that tradition somewhat.
That it's better than you expected it to be?
Yeah.
Based on the fact that it's a TV?
Based on the fact it's a 4th film
Gotcha.
and a TV film.
Oh, man.
And
okay. I don't know if I feel the same way.
Well, here's the thing too. I like kind of readily admit where it's like, I don't really trust my opinion on this one at all because I'm just going to jump ahead. What I think like worked and what didn't work for me is that it felt fan servicey at a lot of points. It's kind of like in the trailer we just watched where it was like answering the questions you've always had. It's like, have we always been asking those questions? But
no, they are answered in other movies.
Right.
Like,
but then because I am a big fan, like it's fun to go and see that stuff.
Well, and
there's still a lot that worked for me within it. It's just this kind of weird, I don't know, this weird framework where it's like it's still up and walking around, but the bones are a little brittle, but on a quick inspection you wouldn't notice.
Like the movie is essentially Norma Bates in the rocking chair from behind.
Yeah.
And then you turn it around and you're like, oh shit, she's been dead for a while. Bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of... I think I suffered kind of the slightly opposite... I don't know if it's opposite of what you just said, but because I like 2 and 3 so much...
Yeah.
My expectations were up for this. And then I was like, ooh. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
Sorry, expectations.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, also there's the part of me that just, and this is why I say I don't even trust my opinion on it. I'm just trying to be objective here. It's just hard to do when you can only be subjective. But that, like, I want it to be good so bad that I'm probably just viewing it that, because, like, I love this character so much.
Yeah. Well, and you haven't watched Bates Motel at all, right?
Not.
So, I think I've seen 2 seasons or so of it, and it is dealing with essentially the flashbacks, like the same era.
But it's all takes
its
place
own thing.
modern time.
It does.
Yeah.
It's its own thing, but it's taking all. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all the same cues, right? And and it's well done. So like, having that context of the well done version of this era of this story, era loosely, it actually made this worse for me, unfortunately.
But I think in the end, because it's, I said, okay, I'm officially giving a buy it, but like it's actually a rent it in a way. But it still goes as far as a rent it for me, because like even in the scene to scenes, I just, found myself, because it's a Psycho movie with Anthony Perkins, and I think the flashback scenes are kind of my favorite part of it, that I get just caught up in a sort of scene by scene basis.
Yeah. I kind of feel similarly with when I bought the Alien box set, and like Alien Resurrection is the 4th one on there.
Yeah.
And like, I kind of like Alien Resurrection.
It's so weird.
But it's not good.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I love Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
Like, that era of Winona Ryder, too, with, like, the real short hair. I think I was, I don't know how old I was, but it was, like, in a sweet spot for me where I was, like, the hugest crush on her. So, like, for that and for some of the weirdness and coolness of it, great. But, like, would I actually go buy that movie? No fucking way. Right? But it was a part of a box set.
It's got aliens in it. It's got Winona Ryder in it. It's got, what's this? Ron Perlman and that squishy faced guy in the film, and Jean-Pierre Genet's other films.
Yep. So, I get it.
The classic basketball scene.
Oh my God. It's like borderline The Room.
And this film, though, we still got the Psycho house. We still got Norma Bates. It's interesting to kind of see. I don't know. It's, for me, it's kind of like if you had combined elements of the 3rd and the 4th, like we could have had the kind of the ultimate send off for Norman Bates in a way, it feels like, or it seems like with their powers combined. I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to say this one, it felt more kind of like a dipping off footnote. But still fine. Like it's, I don't know. It's hard because it's essential or is it not? But it's technically, it's like official. It keeps getting me because it's the screenwriter of Psycho 1 coming back and like finishing this bookended,
Yeah, that is, it's an interesting reality.
And this is what I'm kind of the head trip for me about it too, is like where and how, like who's holding the flame the highest and the bestest of the Psycho flame. Like you have Anthony Perkins giving a continuity to all of them. You have a screenwriter who came back from the first one who disavows the 2nd and 3rd ones. You have the Mick Garris, the director of this one, who had only made Critters 2 at this point, who watched all of the sequels and like read all the books, you know, just to be in formal Norman Bates mode. So you at least have that continuity from the director, but not the screenwriter. You have Anthony Perkins pushing back on the set of this one, but in the end he loved it. So it's like this whole, I don't know. It's just been really interesting kind of dive for me of like, well, how does one keep up Psycho, you know?
Yeah. It sounds like a mess.
Yeah.
And I think the resulting movie is messy.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well,
let's get into it.
A lot of good pieces in there though for me. So let's talk about that. Actually, not yet. We still got to do the summary.
Oh, shit. In true 90s form, a radio talk show.
Yeah.
With Fran Ambrose.
Yep.
And
so it's a radio talk show.
She's smoking a lot of cigarettes in studio. Can you imagine how fucking just unhealthy that studio must have been?
Yep. John Landis is over her shoulder, just breathing it in.
Just randomly. Why is he there?
Because he's buddies with Mick Garris, and they put each other in each other's films.
It's so random.
I know
he is not a good actor. Oh well. Okay, so we've got the Fran show, and she's interviewing a matricide killer.
Well, okay, so it's, I don't know, I'm trying to, how do you condense it more? So so there's a show going on about matricide, a radio show. Call-in show. So none other than our buddy, Norman Bates, calls in saying, I'm the perfect person you want to be talking to. He gives the name Ed, but then they figure it out, you know, after not very long at all, because one of the guests on the show is the doctor who delivered the kind of exposition dump at the end of the first one. Different actor.
Right. Right.
It's fun. There's that continuity at least.
Yeah.
And it's Norman's birthday, and he's now out of the asylum again. He's married to
Connie,
yeah. Married to who is a worker at the hospital,
right?
And she is pregnant, and he may have to kill again because he doesn't want his genes to continue to proliferate.
Yeah,
and the movie is essentially him telling his backstory about why he did the things he is, who he is,
right? Which
we get revealed in flashbacks.
Yeah, so it's sort of him kind of getting it off his chest just finally before he ends it all. 'Cause it seemed to me like he was pointing at, I'm going to do this one last kill and then kill myself.
Yeah.
Even though that's never really said, or
I actually didn't quite get that.
Really?
I didn't really
maybe
think
that's what
that
I
far.
thought was going to happen. I don't know.
I feel like my sense I got was that he didn't think that far ahead, so nor did I.
Fair enough.
And that's kind of it.
That is really it. It's a conversation.
Yeah.
Largely.
So yeah, that's I think too why I give it that it feels more like a coda as part of its atypical structure.
Yeah.
But then what gets me is that we still do build up to a kind of climactic showdown that feels very worthy and pays off for the fans, and it being the book ending. Like they do end up back at the house, which is very satisfying.
Yeah.
And okay, that's about it, I think, for the summary.
Yeah.
All right, now we can move into what worked.
What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked for you?
Go for it.
Okay. Why? I'm just trying to get, I don't know where to start, Tim.
Let's start with...
Well, okay, fine. Why make this movie at all? How about that? And positives within there.
Wow.
It
That's
made me
a good
feel
question.
because like why show these flashbacks at all?
How did we ended the last movie with him in the car with his mom's hand.
Yeah.
So this movie kind of we've just moved on from that. Like it's many years later?
It's like a
maybe
soft retconning of the second and third ones, because again you have the screenwriter who's like, I don't care about those and all that, right. Mother business of.
So does that mean the presumption could be that he's been in this one asylum for 30 some odd years? None of what happened in 2 and 3 exists.
I think I read the screenwriter. It's kind of like he just wishes they didn't exist, but will still admit like, okay, so it's just been a handful, a few years, and for whatever reason, he's gotten out again.
Woof. Okay.
Which is a hard pill to swallow. But this big why of like what I think.
Do you mean why make it from a fan point of view, or like why was anybody?
How is it furthering this kind of, if there's some sort of root horror at this only this story can tell? How does this one continue that? Let us go further, which I think the other two sequels did well.
Okay,
and for me, there's this kind of by getting to experience Norman with Norma for the first time in that way. Yeah, it solidified kind of the importance of how your mother figure is kind of your grounding for like your whole world. It's kind of your sense of stability,
or at the very least the caretaker / like protector person in your life.
Yeah, exactly. It's
in your childhood.
Exactly. It's supposed to be your default protector. So if you're already schizophrenic or whatever, and then on top of that, I mean, forget the specifics aside. I'm sounding like Norman Bates here of Norman's situation. Just like to witness someone who's anything but stable is like the polar opposite of stable, and kind of that be what it's about. It all of a sudden made just Norman's whole story realer and disturbing on that level of like, I could relate to that horror of this kind of what if of someone in your life who's supposed to be such a figure of stability isn't.
Yeah, like the context, matters so that we can get to the end where he has to exorcise his demons.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's all the movie really is. Context and then exorcism. And
I think it was just that specifically, it wasn't an area that I had necessarily thought of too much when I'm kind of pontificating on Norman and what the Psycho movies mean and the repercussions. This got me to sort of shine a magnifying glass in a place I may not have, that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I was just going to go down the opposite path, but yes, agreed.
Yeah.
There's value in that.
Okay. I think the other biggest plus for me in this as a whole is at first I'm kind of like, oh, it's kind of default the weaker one because it's just less Anthony Perkins and he's just kind of standing there the whole movie. But then I realized, wait, no, Olivia Hussey more than balances that out. Like, she's so good. Like, I loved her in this, Tim. You do not. I can tell by your face already. But
I love aspects.
Just as far as her delivering exactly what I just said so much, and she even said in an interview, like, what you think on your own watching the performance is, oh, she just represents someone who can turn on a dime for the worse, and that's what she said. Oh yeah, that's exactly how I was approaching it. And
look, I'm not against her. I think she was committed. No pun intended. She's committed to the role and like is chewing up scenery and going for it.
Yeah.
So
and I love that.
That's great.
I don't know. She killed that for me. In whatever kind of weird world this movie exists in a way, Yeah. Because that is where it's sort of made for TV sensibility ekes in.
Yeah.
But she like on a scene to scene, I like loved her in it so much. I don't know.
Well, for reference, if anybody's not familiar, she was in Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet. She was Juliet, which is sort of a famed, version of Romeo and Juliet.
I'll never forget my seeing that in English class and my teacher taking Post-its and putting them up over like her like third of a nipple that was showing in the bath.
It's like 6 frames.
It's like, come on, Miss McMullen.
I mean, but having said that, I think she what would you even call that? I mean, she created a lifetime crush sort of from that movie for, I think, a lot of people, including myself. I mean, I was like,
jumping ahead to things of note, apparently, Mick Garris said a couple times, like, everyone from, like, the studio executives to, like, everyone just had such a crush on her in this movie. But she, I don't know, she's so good. She's like, you feel that warmth from her, but then at the turn of a dime, it's just utterly cold and distant, and like the shots where it's like her and Chet or whoever are like looking down at Norman. And I love like the point of view style that they really go for in this with her, like where there's so many shots of these people looking right at camera, which I realized in this one made me realize it's something I really like. And just to have it's like, I don't know, I can't think of a better actor than her to kind of best utilize that filmmaking style. So just when she's looking at you, you feel that turn of a dime of like motherly, maternal warmth to just complete unreliable messed upness. Yeah. And then what got me too about her for performance out, this is less her performance and just her working for me, but like I assumed kind of that she must have really been doing a lot to kind of get at this Norma Bates, like how she sounds mode, where she sounded so much like the original da, 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 da. But when you hear Olivia Hussey talk, it's like, oh, she just sounds like this. Norman, da, 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 but no, da, no, da, Norman. Like that's that kind of vibrato voice with a sort of melodramatic flair at any given point.
Kind of
is very much who she is, and it worked so well for the film.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I can get on board with all of what you just said.
There was something, I think, cathartic too, that this was just like, as far as from a horror movie sense too, it was just, she was just going down the checklist of like what not to do to your kid.
Oh my God.
Seriously. If some people say why horror, and an answer to that is so we can collectively recognize what is bad and what not to do.
Reestablish good boundaries.
Yeah. But I think my favorite, just because it was so just kind of sinister and messed up, yet subtle, but being anything but subtle, was when she's tickling him at the father's funeral, and as soon as he laughs, she just snaps at him. It's like,
it's so fucked up.
Yeah,
like so fucked up.
Why, Tim?
Why is it fucked up? Because it's the unpredictability of instability, right? Like where you just don't fucking know what you're gonna get. And can you imagine how, like, growing up in that, like, it just twists your brain up.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in relationships where I've dated people who were, like, potentially borderline personality disorder, and it is just, like, you are dodging bullets all the time. You have no idea what's coming your way.
Right.
At any given moment, it's like you be mid-conversation, and the next thing you know, it's like fucking... You don't even know what you said that set them off.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, what? Huh?
Or how about
where are we?
Things right. He didn't do anything in that case that she didn't make him do. And that's honestly, it's pretty similar to like her, essentially, he gets an erection,
She's humping him basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And then,
And then sends, tells him, you're disgusting, makes him go out in just his underwear into the rain and cold. And then as soon as she does that, comes back and does the exact thing, like, oh, you poor boy. It's like, exactly.
Oh, It is twisted. It's in a way, though. I mean, I also feel a sympathy for her in being in that. She doesn't even fucking know. You know what I mean? It's not insidious.
Yeah.
Right? It's not purposefully manipulative. It is conditionally manipulative. Like, it is a product of her instability, like mental instability. And so it's just like, it's not, that's what's such a weird thing to me. It's like when people, you know, get upset over somebody who's, you know, schizophrenic or whatever their behavior is. It's like, you can't really, like, they're not in control of this.
Yeah.
So getting mad at them definitely doesn't help. But being the recipient of that type of, you know, inconsistency of intention is really hard to navigate.
Yeah.
And then as a kid, having a kid receiving that, I just can't even fucking imagine.
I mean,
it just would fucking bury your brain.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to just as much, though, the sort of the state of the world then and even still now of just, we don't know how the heck to deal with these people.
No, I know.
Surely we know now that just locking someone behind a cage and asking them the same questions, you know, every Monday of every week doesn't help them.
No. You know, I read something, I can't remember what it was, but it was just a little blurb about like healing or something like that. And it was sort of saying like the idea that we can just heal on our own, that we can just like get over it, or we can take care of the hurt that we've had in our lives, whatever that is, on our own, is just patently false. We need other people around us to like work with to heal.
I mean, that's kind of one of the main things this movie is about, because it kind of shows with love from this caretaker woman at the hospital and support through his life in recent years. And Norman finally, you know, can live a semblance of a normal life. Even
him having the conversation with the disc jockey is sort of a version of that, right?
But it's just, you can look at it though of, rather than this is just a slightly different framing of, rather than this is the story of him going crazy again, this is a case of the healthy support, not falling back or whatever, or
and I
losing
think
effect.
A cool kind of aspect of this framework that I like is having the doctor, the sort of by the book, black and white doctor.
What he needs is a professional.
Exactly. That character is sort of pushing on that idea of like, dude, you know, it can't be looked at from this like stark clinical point of view. It's a person. And you need to actually like listen to them and have some fucking empathy and like,
which CC Pounder represents the host.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like that sequence where she's like, you know, she's like, I'm going to figure out a way to talk to him and like, you know, help him, so to speak. And the doctor's like, you're unqualified. You don't know what the fuck you're doing. And she's just like, then go away.
Right. Which immediately just makes us go like, is it really better? I don't care about your professional accolade if you sound this angry.
No shit. Did I ever tell you, I went to a therapist once who was mean. And I was like, this is not helpful. I was like, in 3 different, I only went to 3 or 4 sessions, and in 3 of the 4, she basically like snapped at me. And I just was like, no, like that's not a good method.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing, dude? So whatever. Yeah. Bedside manner matters.
And Mark Frost did not have it. Warren Frost. Frost. Mark Frost's son.
Yeah.
Warren Frost. Which it was great, but I kind of wished I can say he was great. A quick aside of something that worked. He was good in it because I'm a Twin Peaks fan. It was fun seeing, but I don't even know if he was still alive, but it could have been kind of fun just to get that original actor back at the same time.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine?
How trippy would that be?
It was good casting though. He does kind of feel like his, as we just described him, that clinical.
Well, and of a time, right? If you're trying to kind of match the tone of 1961.
Yeah, 60 is the film release.
Yeah, right. So the guy in 60 who is looking after quote unquote mental patients.
Yeah.
In 1990, probably still a dick.
Right. Okay, just to finish up, I was saying like the checklist of what not to do to your kid.
Oh, yeah.
The centerpiece one that's so amazing is when she dresses him up as like in her clothes, haphazardly smudges lipstick on his face, calls him girl, and locks him in the closet. And then hands him a pitcher of water and says, so, this is where you go wee. And then also says something about like, you only use that for going wee. You hear me? I think.
So fucking.
But just that whole, her locking him in the closet, again, that like direct, eye contact with us, the viewers, breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. I thought that was pretty impactful and
again,
fun.
What you were saying too, it's like, it's exactly the wrong way to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like shame, isolation.
Yeah. Like just, I felt that like when he's you see him from outside of the closet through the floor, like peeking out onto the out of the crack, yelling, "Mother, please, mother, please."
And then the hard cut to present day Norman has had a meltdown. He is on the floor, like in a trance, almost like reliving this. I quite like that.
Right. It's like you go, oh, this is that serious.
Yeah, it's trauma, like big time trauma for him.
Locked in a space. It's like. We don't have to tell you. That's not a fun feeling thing.
No, thank you very much. I do not like small spaces.
Yeah. There was some, talking about the POV. There was some fun POV stuff of Norman's too, of like in relation to seeing Norma, like the stuff of her letting her hair down, where it's just kind of this weird like pseudo romance like thing, almost how it's shot, but like at the same time it's like you get like being a little kid and kind of before there's anything sexual introduced, and like you can see your mother's beauty in that kind of still like feeling comforted or still being able to appreciate or whatever kind of way. So just that, like, I thought was super interesting and unique, and like, what other film could you do this? I thought was really good. And it's his lines too, like it's so hokey, but at the same time it's so Norman. Hair hundreds of light years long.
I do remember that.
But just like for the hair fetishist in us all, I don't know. It worked. Yeah. I thought of X-Day hair extensions. Exactly. That's what Tim was singing.
Wow.
I don't know. I thought those were really, really interesting, unique scenes.
I mean, I will say that all of that stuff, the discomfort that it evokes in seeing like that blurred line between adolescence or even pre-adolescence and the like maternal sexualization, like that stuff, it's very uncomfortable. I'm like, no thanks. It's like, get it off.
And that's what you're doing here, Tim.
Right, exactly. So it's like that to me is one of the more effective things that they go into.
Yeah.
And the result is we go, oh yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Let's try to stick to like the flashback scenes here, but like,
did you like the boxing scene?
Oh yeah, I loved that scene, Tim. Do you ask because you knew I would?
Yeah.
Or do you like it too?
It's got the things you've already mentioned. Like it's got that like weird POV shit.
Yeah.
Chet is so strange.
He's so hateable. He was a local Florida actor. Anyone who wasn't the main trio.
Oh yeah.
Was all Florida actors.
Florida, really?
Yeah, because that's where they shot it.
I didn't really.
Yeah.
Why?
We'll get into that then.
Yeah, let's.
If you were unaware.
I did not know that.
Things of note.
Okay, cool.
But did you like that scene then? You brought it up.
I like the I like it on paper. I don't love the execution, and that's actually kind of largely my things that didn't work.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like what is actually happening is great. This whole idea of just like the kind of man up culture and like be a tough guy and take it and all that shit. Like it's so nauseating to me, but it's so effective because again, you're sitting there going, "Yeah, I get it now."
It makes me feel for Norman and like
absolutely
the thought process too. It makes you get like I don't want to say, but like you get why like poisoning and taking that kind of approach to someone like that is not a natural result, but the end result of this situation. Because like. I mean, this is where I relate to Norman too. I feel like in much more subtle ways, I'd been in situations like that with Norman as a kid.
It is bullying.
Yeah.
It is the definition of bullying.
Right. But here's the thing though. It's the train of thought I like had even as a kid and then, would share with Norman. You don't just go, oh, I'm upset because, let's see, what am I trying to say here? Like, clearly, you just do want to like, yes, I do. You're thinking, I do just want to punch you. And I don't have the hesitation to feel that. But your mind stops you because you go, oh, but you are clearly physically more strong. So you just kind of go, then you get in the head loop of like, so that means you are an idiot. Like, what are you actually trying to do here? Like, clearly I'm not going to win. If I punch you, you're just going to use that as an excuse to maybe punch me back or I don't know what. So you are just inherently wrong, sir. Like, no matter what. And I'm going to prove that to you when you least expect it.
Right. Well, it's at the end of the day, it's a how do I describe this? It is rooted in powerlessness, right? And nobody likes to feel powerless. Right? It's a very unpleasant place to be.
And so Chet is feeling powerless to make Norman like act how he wants to see him.
Right, but Norman is completely powerless to engage at Chet's level.
Right.
And so it sucks it's a fucking
right.
That whole thing of like manipulating somebody. I don't know how actually to describe it concisely, but that manipulation of like, come on, just fight back so that you can overpower them.
It's such a head
so
trip.
Fucked up.
Because like even then you're Norman. You're like, okay, now then I'm going to spend the next 2 years bulking up and getting older, and I'm going to learn how to box and fucking fight you back. But then go, yeah, but that motivation, I should be doing it for me. Not for, you go, Norman, do it for you, not for Chet.
It is just, again, the unhealthiest version of instilling, like, growth in somebody. Like, you could lead by example, or, like, there's so many other ways that you could, like...
That is the way.
Build somebody up.
I think do anything is always...
And motivate them to better themselves. This is the worst way.
Yeah.
Like on all fronts. So, yeah, I mean, just the reinforcement of all the things that are, like you're saying, like just the worst things you could do to a kid.
Yep. And then that scene ends, that I kind of already mentioned it, with Chet and the mother like looking down at Norman.
The
like
way that she like pops in and like nuzzles up to Chet, and they're both like kind of like looming over him and laughing and smiling. It just gives me a stomach ache. I'm just like, ugh.
Which is then what Norman gives them.
Yeah.
Which, do you want to talk about that then? Because I feel like that's the other highlight scene.
Is there any other?
Oh yeah, if you want to stick to more chronological.
Let's see, it does go out of order anyway.
Yeah.
So,
but I love like
you like the date, the two dates, right?
Yeah. So there's the younger girl who's with the fireworks.
Yeah.
I like that whole scene, except for, let's see. I generally really like that scene as sort of this long build.
Yeah.
I think if it's not going to be black and white, which they're originally talking about, like do something cool. Let us use color and fireworks and sort of these stark, almost like comic booky things.
That's right. There are some really good splashes of red throughout that scene.
Yeah.
Which like we've talked about a
Right,
million
it was
times.
neat.
That's your signifier for danger.
And I liked him in the costume, him dressed as the mother.
Yeah.
I liked that aspect of the stabbing. There's some other things with the stabbing I'll get to and what didn't work, but generally I still liked it, or at least all those aspects I just mentioned.
Yeah, for the most part, I think that scene works.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that are just not my taste, I guess, in execution.
But the pacing good.
is good for sure.
Him is pretty good.
You just know, like, it is a good exercise in knowing what's coming and still being excited or scared for when it happens.
Yeah.
You know, so that's cool.
And
like
I will
her
say-
coming into Norma's room and like shaking the fucking corpse.
So that's
That whole thing. Like,
sorry, I should have said
who
that
would do
because
that?
I forgot
Who the
that's
fuck would do that?
I forgot that's part of the scene, but that was another one of my favorite things in the flashbacks was like how first we kind of see too the body's like moving on its own. So we're like, is she still alive?
Yeah,
is she
what
not?
in
It was
the
just a
fuck?
fun kind of like throw us off with this is Norman's reality, whatever. But how
Right.
if the rest of the movie were just in the fourth one now, so we're allowed to show everything super explicitly, this one before it got to there, it did so well of like the decomposed face and shadow.
Yeah.
Looked so, it was like perfect. It was spot on lighting of how much to obscure and how much to not. I loved that. Yeah, just super effective how the corpse was hidden in the shadow in that scene.
I thought all of the makeup effect type stuff, or whatever you want to call the design of each variation of the corpse.
Yeah,
there's
the
a bunch
one-
of different ones, right? There's an early version where
Right.
she's just starting to kind of shrivel, but it still feels like Olivia Hussey. Mm-hmm. And then there's
The one at the way end.
the
was
way
great.
end is awesome. Yeah, it's like just a shell. It's so good.
Yeah, super skinny,
Yeah.
mummified.
Yep. So
Even when she's the freshest dead, and it's just is Olivia Hussey, and we see him sewing her stomach up where he's doing
yeah.
the taxidermy process
Yeah.
on her.
I would have liked to see even more of that.
Just,
I guess you can't. Can you? I don't know.
I'm
I wonder
sure
what
you
the
step
line
the
is.
arm separately from the torso, right? Like I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, however much we did see made me cringe appropriately.
Yeah, right.
So I thought that was good. Yeah, the boxing. Oh, drowning in the trunk. That was the trunk of the car.
Yeah.
That was good.
What did I say? Something. I mean, that is just
Right.
the worst way to go.
Because it's like at this point, we're just sort of buying Norman is able to put himself through stabbing someone else. And then like when they're at least passed out or whatever, strangling someone else.
Right.
But to sit there and do nothing while you're aware of someone drowning alive, it sort of brought this felt like this was yet another turning point for him.
Yeah. Whenever you're watching somebody learn how to do the thing that they become good at, like I'm into it because you get to see the sort of the cracks in the process.
Yeah.
And so this idea of him thinking that he's killed her and he gets her out of the car and she's not dead. He has to strangle her again. And he really thinks that he's gotten her that time, and he puts her in the trunk and then closes the trunk, and he hasn't. Like, he's fucking up
Yeah.
the thing that he's eventually quite good at. And so I love seeing that phase of anybody. Like, you can do it with people who are good characters too. Like, it's fun to see
making
people
birdhouses out of popsicle sticks. Let's see him mess up.
right. So I love all that. I think you maybe want to see it. Well, I don't know. I'll get to that later. But yeah, that sequence is a good one. The performance of the lady, the lady suitor, whatever you call her, is quite good.
Yeah, I liked her. Yeah, she was really good.
The lighting again, you get when he's strangling her the second time.
Yeah.
Is the tail lights, so he's washed in red again. So they do, they're re-upping on the style of those things. It's good.
Yeah. Just horrifying.
Yep.
When she's can't get out.
Apparently, it's quite difficult to strangle somebody to death.
I heard that in watching one of these documentaries or listening to one of these commentaries where like Hitchcock always said it was hard to strangle, to actually kill someone.
Yep.
So I think that's when they were talking about the big poisoning scene, Tim.
Ooh.
Talk about like, it was this was where it was both fan service as I'm talking about as far as like seeing the murder actually happen, but more than just fan service because I think it was really good. How prolonged it was, the poisoning, the build up to it, that it's just sort of, we're in the thick of this like not attractive romance between Mrs. Bates and Chet.
Oh my God.
Norma and
very
Chet.
Not attractive.
Yeah.
Both of them are just like, ugh.
Well, we're so with Norman at that point too. And like, it's pretty, I don't know, maybe is a little chintzy when he's like looking on, you know, in the hallway and you just think she's going to see him because he's just so obvious watching on like right there. But it's still fun, like his, you know, him chewing his lips or whatever he's doing and watching it, hoping she drinks it, and then she finally does. And then I just love how we get the prolonged stuff of the moments once they've realized it's him. Like he pops up out of nowhere trying to, you know, get him again. She feels getting to see her feel so betrayed, but like so helpless for the first time too.
Yeah. And
just go after him. I don't know. There's a lot in there. I loved it.
Well, and then we get into the basement, which I like. Very
think
excited
about that to work our way from her perch down to the basement
where she, you know, where she ends up in the first one. Ultimately, it's like, that's that's where we'll get to.
Yeah, it feels like she kind of has two final resting places, the bed and that chair downstairs.
Yeah. It's cool.
And then, but every moment it gives weight to, like, when she vomits. I mean, both of them vomiting are great.
I hate that shit.
He has her hand over her mouth and she vomits. Oh my God, incredible.
Ugh.
So incredible,
I mean,
right?
Yeah, in a good way. I hate it in a good way. It's like one of my least favorite things to see. I hate barfing. I haven't barfed in a long, long time.
It's like you're like Jerry Seinfeld on Seinfeld. He knows like the date he last barfed, which was like 13 years ago or something.
I could probably come up with it. I'd have to think for a minute, but yeah, it's maybe my least favorite thing to experience.
All right, so to get a bit more to maybe the other aspects of the film too, outside of just the flashbacks, I liked the tension between Norman and the talk show host Fran.
Okay.
Of just kind of this interesting push-pull of like what you're saying earlier, like she's represents this force who like maybe wants to take a different approach that actually behooves him more.
Right.
So just to see that play out and be effective was satisfying. And at the same time, just to kind of, lure him and his story out, but keep him on the line.
Right.
That was just kind of a simple but fun, unique conceit to this.
I mean, he is still great.
Oh, I mean, that's the other big thing. Yeah, great. I wanted to get to that.
Like, even just him standing and talking.
Yeah.
These amazing close-ups of him.
Right?
Where he's just fucking standing there talking, looking off into the other room or wherever the fuck he's looking. And like...
the precipices of his memory.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, he's just so compelling to look at.
Yeah. And they do some fun stuff with just like changing up the lighting in the kitchen he's standing in. Super 90s kitchen. But yeah, no, it's great. He brought it again. Like, apparently whatever contention he had with Mick Garris or blah, 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 like he still did his job.
Yeah, he did.
It brought it.
Yeah.
Which he at this point was diagnosed with AIDS, was like just diagnosed and died 2 years later.
Wow.
From complications with pneumonia, I believe.
Man. Well, he chewed it up on this one, so. Yeah.
There were some just more, God, what were they? But just some more classic kind of monologue moments, you know? I can say, so it was great just having some, like, because the second and third one, he brings, the continuity I need to Norman Bates. And the scripts, they do, like, they know how he sounds, but there was something that I think it must be this old screenwriter. You kind of be like, oh, he's still around, the original screenwriter of the first one, which is like so connected just to kind of his Norma Bates's era and like this era that Norman is stuck in, whatever that like whatever that era of America is, like gosh jolly whiz thing
Leave
of
It to
like
Beaver.
Like to have her say, "Oh, my rose hip water or orange hip water." Does she say? Just exactly.
It's just like, what the fuck is
but
that?
But we go exactly like, what the hell is that? Because we are so outside of that time from 100 years ago.
Right. So it would be more like that is late 50s.
It's 40s, 50s. That stuff.
Because if Norman, when he goes to prison or whatever initially, is in his mid-late 20s.
Yeah.
We're talking about 15 years prior to that.
So it's just
so it's 45,
right?
45, 50 somewhere. No, sorry, 55-ish. No, 45. Yeah.
So it's just these choice examples of this screenwriter who still has much more of a sort of built-in connection to this time period, I'm guessing, and to like. Those are kind of quintessential Norman things too, where we hear a phrase and go, "What the hell?" But it works because it's their life, it's their normal life, and
and to that point too, just aesthetically being in the painted Bates house, and the
yellow, it's like my dad knowing, ever since I was a kid and watching Leave It to Beaver, I always wanted to live in a yellow house, and we lived in a yellow house for a while, But exactly that, Leave It to Beaver, and he was of that generation. The other example of just that, the screenwriter, what's his name? I keep forgetting now. Joseph Stefano, still connected to that era, was maybe one of my favorite lines. Tim, that's a standalone line in all of the Psycho films, though, which he says to his wife at the end when he's like, "Trust me, trust me." He goes, "All that faith and no potatoes." Like talk about Norman-y lines,
Seriously.
And it's that kind of line that makes me go, well, who could have written that aside from apparently this Joseph Stefano guy? Like he's at least plugged into a way to Norman in that way, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I'm very excited to watch the original.
Yeah, after all this. Yeah, it's kind of fun to go back. The ending was great. If it's kind of like the whole movie, we're going, well, where is this all going to culminate? To actually have him, say, meet me at the house. We see it. It's more worn and torn than it's ever been. It's literally abandoned at this point, for however long. I don't know what worked for you about that. If you're nodding your head,
I think that is to me kind of the movie. Yeah. Ultimately, it's like that sequence
is the one chunk it didn't feel cheap or
exactly.
Yeah.
And him having this sort of like, I don't know what you would call it. He has to kind of go through the layers of his own personal hell to get out of it.
Yep.
That's a fun. I always, anytime you're doing that kind of thing, like any sort of feeling Dante's Inferno-y kind of thing, where it's like the levels of hell or whatever it is.
Did you see the house that Jack built yet?
No, I haven't. Okay. Thanks for reminding me though, because I forgot and I need to watch it.
If you like that thing and things, then check it
I
out.
love that thing, and so watching him have to go through and revisit these people or points in life is always nice. I just like it, and his performance within that of turning around and seeing any of the subsequent.
I was going to say you should clarify what you're talking about here is
that as he's burning the house down, specifically from that point on, and then trying to get out of the house, and with every turn he's met with one of the people that he's killed in this movie.
Yeah.
God, it would have been fucking crazy to add
I kept wondering
other kills, but how would you do that?
Today they would with weird CG bringing back Princess Leia stuff, like Janet Leigh would be there somehow.
Oh shit, that'd be nuts. Anyway, so but I love that kind of thing, and just watching him try to get out and like get hurt and then have to like make his way again, like his mother, from the perch all the way down to the basement and then get out through the basement it's just fun and cool, and like you get to watch somebody, it's like their life flashing before them, and you get to revisit these things and overcome them.
I'd say like for the sequels, even more than the original, one of the most reliable aspects that we've already talked about in another episode is the house as metaphor.
Totally.
So just we're just so with it, like, burn it down. We are feeling what that means.
Yeah. I have a story where I have the house burned down in the end, and somebody was like, well, it's so much like this movie. I'm like, dude, who gives a shit? It's the effective way to deal with this type of story.
Yeah,
like, don't tell me not to do a thing that's universally good. Like, get the fuck out of here.
And I was just rooting for him so much during it. Like, first we're rooting for him to, don't do it, Norman, don't kill her. We want to see that he has free choice again,
right?
Or now in this moment.
I think maybe just because of the third one, him taking the knife to his mother, to the corpse.
And it's the same knife is so good. He gets the literal knife.
I really thought he was going to slash his own throat.
It looked like that the way he was holding it.
There's a couple times when I was like, oh shit, here it comes. And I was like, oh no.
Right.
I mean, I get it, but also Norman.
Exactly. After all this, we're going, Norman, come on, Norman. Which is exactly what the wife is saying.
Yeah.
And then if that didn't give us enough to root for, just for him not to do it, then we have to see him escape, as you have already described, his literal burning flames hell going on around him, of his memories popping up, making him fall off the stairs. Is this exciting to see? He's older now.
That was quite a fall.
Yeah. It's like, it made it all just feel
what a beautiful metaphor too. The banister, the thing that you hold on to keep you upright when you're traversing a set of stairs, giving way.
Yep.
And you fall on your fucking ass.
See, that's the house's metaphor includes all the pieces within it, rooms, items, all that. That's part of it.
Yeah. That's cool.
But yeah, good ending. And then even, just the last, like, my
God.
When the firemen are leaving, and we see it's still largely standing. And I was kind of like, I wish they had let it burn more, like let him stay free. And then lo and behold, the basement's still there. The chair's still rocking.
Yeah.
Norma, as long as that's there. I felt like in a good way, it was kind of the best in both worlds in the end, as far as like giving it a mixed, not so cut and dry, like happy ending. Because like, as I admit, as much as I wanted it just to see it burn completely down and kind of had this closing, I think it's important with films like this that are about kind of, tricky, hard to parse things as far as the root of evil, just to have it be like, oh, but in some, extremely just suggested, not literal way, like we hear the mother still yelling, let me out, and like the baby crying, being born.
The baby crying, I just...
It just puts it leaves it so there's still a question versus just a sort of, okay, now we can just, brush our hands and leave and that's it.
Yeah. It's I have very mixed feelings about the baby cry tag.
I mean, yeah, in itself, kind of like it could be handled. I don't know, just in the specificity of how it's done. Like it in itself didn't bother me, but just
we had that in Halloween.
The new one?
The new one. Doesn't the new one end with Mike Myers breathing as it goes to black?
I'm sure.
After the house is burned down. So it's a very well-worn
Yeah.
device. Let's put it that way.
Got it.
So
But,
anytime it happens, I'm always like, do I like
But I will
that?
say what did work for me, maybe all I needed was just Norma's voice yelling still. I didn't need the baby crying, but it's like,
Yeah, I can see
whatever.
that.
They both worked for me as
Yeah.
far as making it not so
Right.
cut and dry. Just to wrap it up this section, the new recordings of the original score I thought were really good.
It's interesting.
Well
yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Like they actually re-recorded those again. The actor CCH Pounder, which once you know
What a
it,
name.
you always want to say it. I recognized her from End of Days. She's like someone who pops up and stuff, but I watched that movie a lot.
Wow.
She's in that as like one of the cops or detectives or whatever.
Yeah. I can't even think of where, like, a reference of where I've seen her, but I've seen her many times.
I just like she's great because you think who else can kind of, I mean, you know, whoever else can, but not many people can sell lines that pull you right in. I loved her line. Was this the first time you had a conversation with a corpse? And I love that line because it's like for the first time we sort of have these flashbacks in the other movies where it's dude talking to his mother's corpse, but it's not like ever explicitly stated. Like it's obvious, but to have it said out loud like that and have Norman then respond, you know, just kind of
He's like,
matter of factly.
not the first time.
It did a lot to show that no, he's thought about all this. He knows, he's aware of the reality of the situation. I don't know. I liked her. She brought a lot to those radio scenes, which weren't working for me, like kind of.
I'm like holding my tongue here.
We'll get to, but I'll say she was kind of maybe the one shining light out of it. And like,
I mean, personally, I think that the engineer, the blonde engineer who is in the booth, flapping her hands around every once in a while, perfection.
Is that sarcastic?
Yeah.
Well, I also liked Warren Frost in it.
Okay.
But we'll get into what didn't work. I don't think his presence was. Yeah, it was weird how he just kind of wrote him out.
Yeah.
But he's always great. I've already said that.
Yeah.
CCH Pounder, Olivia Hussey, awesome. Chet. All the looking at camera. Okay. Tim, I think I've said my piece on what worked.
Fair enough.
How have you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that this was filmed in Florida. I'll have to think about that. But yeah.
All right, great. Let's move on to what did not work.
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
I'm just like already letting you take the charge on this, Tim.
I have a lot of things, so let's go backwards a little bit from where we just ended with the ending.
Yeah.
So I want to start there. As much as I like the actual context of the ending, the context. The impetus for it and how much we care about Connie is a huge problem for me.
Right. Who the heck is Connie? Yeah.
Who, on so many levels, like who the fuck is she? Who gives a shit? There's nothing in the movie that makes me want to care about her.
Here's what when I was saying kind of best of both worlds, the third and the fourth. I think I got this. I think I stole this reading another review, but just the idea if we had his love interest in the third one who kind of felt like, oh, this is Norman's meant to be kind of thing. If we had somehow had her or her equivalent and been involved in his new wife, you know, at that level, that worked. But I think just for what this movie ended up being, you should have had it where like we are just even more subjective with Norman. We don't need to see her when we're cutting to her. Like as if it would have been almost sort of paradoxically more effective had we just sort of try to be even more subjective with Norman rather than trying to build her up at all as a character.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know what the right tactic to make her character effective is.
Well, I can say why I wouldn't I feel you and I agree with you to an extent, but I think in that sort of kid watching a movie caught up in it way, I was able, like, her character worked for me as just being representative and emblematic of the sort of, if she came from the psychiatry world, someone who just believes in Norman and wants the best for him. Like, that is almost enough just to, like, that's all I need, you know?
Yeah, I do. I just feel like there's something missing that gets us hooked into caring about her at all.
Yeah.
And I think partially it's point of view from her. And I don't think you need much. I think you just need her. You need some sort of connection to how she feels about things that's not passive.
Yeah.
Like the only real interaction we have with her is the phone call with him semi-early on, right? Where she's like, oh, your line's been busy all day or something. And
that's the neighbor who says that.
God.
Your wife said your line's been busy.
So there's some point where we are given the information that she is pregnant.
We see her at her work or something.
Right.
Like, he does talk to her.
They have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
I'm not imagining this. It's so brief, and it's sort of...
And then there's...
Yeah, because he's cooking. Remember, he's cooking, and she's talking about the cake. Oh, I forgot the cake,
it's
and I'm going to get
the cake conversation, and then...
Who fucking cares?
Right.
It's so kind of just arbitrary. It's like, yes, we're establishing that it's his birthday, but then we're establishing that she's forgetful. Like, it's like... I don't care.
More of how I think. I mean, are you sniffing what I'm? Are you buying what I'm selling here? As far as, like, if we just had her in it less and had it be more subjective with him. So I think that's
one direction for sure. That would be really interesting. As if we leave her or our connection to her kind of out. Mm-hmm. And all we get is the kind of quote unquote specter of her from his point of view. When she shows up and we see her, depending on how you cast it and how you kind of have her play it, we could go, oh shit, she is in fucking trouble.
Right.
But this other thing, like, she's set up right off the bat as not being, she's sort of flighty. Yeah. She's very, I don't know how to put this without sounding like an asshole. She's really, really fragile right off the bat. And that doesn't work.
It seems like it doesn't seem like her whole character and personality is just, is Norman good or bad, you know?
Yeah, and it's pointing at the end.
Yeah.
Like, I used to have an acting teacher who would always say, do not play the end of the scene at the top of the scene. You don't know what's going to happen. And this movie effectively plays her from the beginning how she will be at the end.
Yeah.
And that's a huge mistake.
Well,
if she's somebody who worked in the asylum with him and, you know, was able to help him get to where he's at, where he's healthy and, like, functioning in the world, and then fell in love with him and married him and wants to have a baby with him, do not make her this vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
Make her a fucking badass. Like, at least so that when she's faced with this, the horror of him falling back into his psychosis, she has something to fight against.
It does feel like she was written one way, then performed or directed the other, you know?
Yeah, so...
Casted. Maybe.
So I think, like you're saying, if she's this ambiguous sort of looming thing that we meet later, you can play that up and make it effective.
Right, because imagine, like, her just showing up as part of, like, he's there at the house hallucinating kind of thing, and then she just shows up. Like, he's already fighting his demons, and then she, you know, that we see, like, how subjective that is to have the ghost of his past becoming literalized in front of him and for the film.
Right.
Just then all of a sudden she's introduced as an element of almost, oh, is she real or not? Then we just sort of, she's being used more emblematically for Norman of, like, which is how it is anyway, of what choice is he going to make, you know, except he has some sort of action, you know, what he can do whatever he wants. What's the word for that?
Free will?
Yeah. He has free will. He has a choice in the matter.
Right.
That's kind of the crux of the ending. And then, like, I think this is also more just kind of, maybe this is even more so than that, just kind of rather than saying what didn't work for me, it's kind of what could have been more so. But talking about, like, his subjectivity and being able to play that up more, like, we have this house that feels like so out of place from the other Psycho movies.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which is why I kind of say Other gives it this kind of separate coda feel to it. But how cool would it have been to see that acknowledged more if, like, the house itself, there was, like, the modernity of it and sort of the cleanliness was almost oppressive to Norman. Like, I wanted to see it done that way to him. So that way, like, throughout the whole movie, there's almost more scenes of him. We see he's still wrestling on some level with him feeling out of place in the quote unquote normal world that is also anything but you know, is still what he wants to adapt to for his own happiness. And so then that could have led up better to, again, like, we see he's been one way, he still has a choice he has to make at the end, and blah, blah, blah.
I think they missed an opportunity in what you're saying, because there's all of the scenes of him on the phone in this house. It's just him standing there. He's almost never really doing anything.
Right.
But if you add action, if you add behavior instead of these stylized shots, you add behavior and of how he exists in that house.
Right.
And you lean in on what you're talking about, sort of the modernity and, like, the antithetical nature of this house versus the house that we're flashing back to. And you see how this life that he's trying to live in is actually part of the problem. Mm-hmm. You show it through, I mean, there's endless ways you could do this, but just show him being behaviorally frustrated with certain, like, aspects, whether it be that it's too clean or something. I don't know. What you show those things. Don't fucking just tell us.
Well,
what's
a small
going
example
on.
of that was a good moment was him breaking the apple apart with his hands.
Right. Yeah. So, but make it more about.
How about we start
the room or the house?
How about we start with him, what he's doing, versus just some random guy giving a monologue, like, as our intro. You know,
Ooh,
which
that guy
was Tim talking about what didn't work for me was just that being our, like, lead into the film. Not good.
No,
but he was actually only there. I'll skip ahead and won't mention this in things of note. That was Anthony Perkins' assistant / stand-in that Anthony Perkins insisted be featured in the film somehow.
Okay, interesting.
Was this guy
and odd?
Yeah,
very, very odd. Like his hairdo.
Yeah. Anyway,
so yes, I think you're suffering. This movie is suffering from a couple bigger things where it's like they're just sort of compartmentalizing almost too much. It's like we've got the radio scenes, which suck.
Start with Norman in, like, hearing it on the radio.
Exactly.
Versus just we're at the radio station.
But they're trying to do this thing of, like, the reveal.
There he is.
Yeah, it's like, no, we
can still do a different reveal of him.
You could just show the radio in this new weird house, and you know somebody's listening to it, and you're getting the context of what's being said on it, and you can still do an Indiana Jones and not show him until the proper moment.
Right. He doesn't. As the moment he says hello and who he is, like, we still lead up to that.
Yeah, but give us something to sink our teeth into in the opening of what his state is leading up to making him call into the show. Mm-hmm. What's his environment? What's his life? Like, what's his general sort of, you know, there's a thing in screenwriting you see here and there where it's like in the first 10 pages or something, you show work, play, and home life for the main character, and so you can really sink your teeth in as a viewer to what their status quo is, like what their current state is, the state that they need to get the fuck out of.
Right.
But we spend I don't know. How long is the movie? Like 90, 95 minutes or something like that? We spend about 70 of those minutes with him in the same state.
Yeah.
There is no real change for him.
Well, it's like, if you don't show work and play and we see his home, just like we already said, we don't at all see how he feels about his home. You know, we don't see him like
we see it in 3.
Yeah.
Right? We see him working at the motel. We see sort of work. We see him playing with the stuffing the bird.
Yeah.
You know, right off the
He's
bat.
lying in his dust-covered couches.
Yeah,
gladly.
we get that and we go, oh, I know where he's at.
Yeah.
That's important. But it's almost like they're making the assumption that because it's the 4th movie and we know who Norman Bates is, that we just are supposed to get it.
Yeah.
But he's in a completely different environment than we have ever seen him before, so we need context.
Right. It's true. I will say it did. Yeah. All this would have made it better, but like I was able just to be like, okay, here's Norman Bates again. You know,
I agree. We're experienced watchers of movies, so it's like, yes, of course we can get on board. But if we're talking about how to make a thing work better,
yeah, I know
there's definitely things.
Here.
I just the attempt at making the radio station interesting visually, I was like, to me, it just was nauseating.
It felt like
they kept doing these sweeping fucking shots.
Right. It felt like it was kind of like what I felt from effectively. It felt like the Clamp Towers in Gremlins 2, where it's like super gray and everyone's just kind of smoking.
I hate that look.
Oh, but it's like in that it's used as satire.
Exactly.
It's like effective.
No, but yeah.
But here it felt just kind of you're stuck in like a 90s nightmare.
Yes.
Early 90s nightmare.
It is every like up all night after dark midnight movie, B movie, shitty USA Network like aesthetic from 1990.
Yep.
Or like 1987 to 1993, whatever. When I was a teenager.
Right.
Or no, preteen.
Like they're trying to do CTU almost from 24. That's just where all that was said.
It just doesn't work for me. So, trying to make it visually interesting is like, yes, I get you. Like, it's commendable to do that, but they just overdid it.
Yeah.
Like, don't rotate me around that desk that many times. I was like, I'm fucking barf.
I would have been fine with, I don't know. I'm just trying to think this out loud. Maybe won't agree with this after, but like you have Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates. Why not just have him on the whole time? Why see the radio station at all?
Wait, say that again?
Why do we need to see? Can we still have the radio station without seeing it at all? Just hearing it?
Yes.
And
you can go 2 ways, I think. You can have the radio be a character.
Yeah.
And he's interacting essentially with the voice in the radio.
I'd rather look at him listening more than
Exactly.
just watching like John Landis like lurch over them.
Or you can reverse it where you did you see Pontypool?
I forget.
The whole first like 40 minutes of that movie is just the disc jockey.
Oh, yeah.
Talking.
I
And
saw
it's
that.
very interesting because he's interesting, but it's super simple. Like it's just him talking, but what he's saying is interesting.
Yeah.
And he's talking to the air, right? He's not, well, I think a couple people call in,
Right.
but by and large, you can do it where you're really confined.
So yeah,
and that's effective.
Maybe that's it. Like, be more selective. Like, if it's important, we do cut in at one moment to see. I was going to call her CC Ryder. That's a song. CCH Pounder. Right. Like, cut into her just for some choice monologue or like response to Norman, or like when we're giving weight to cutting back to Norman after it, like something like that. But it just sort of felt like, oh, just what we're doing is we just are cutting back and forth because that's what you do. It didn't seem like that thought was put into, like, do we need to see this? If so, how
Can
much?
we see it in a way that's not bleh?
Right. I want to see, as I said, I just would rather see Norman listening as is now.
Yeah. Maybe that's asking too much of an actor at that point to be like, we're gonna have.
No, you have Anthony Perkins back for one last.
I know. No, I would love it, but I wonder if they were.
He was there for all the radio scenes, saying his lines off camera. Like you have
presumably, yeah, that's true.
No, I think I did read that.
Oh,
at least for some of it, confirmed. Saying like how parts of it, it's just hurt by its budget and made for TV-ness and time constraint. I think it was shot in 4 6-day weeks, they said. Which is like,
okay.
I look at that and go,
that seems like a lot of time.
But as I said, I loved the flashbacks, and they seemed kind of the most outside of that for me, except for, like I said, I liked the scoring. This is what was weird for me. Like you had this incredible, you had the recycled Bernard Herrmann score, recorded again with a live orchestra, but then you had like the other original compositions, and then you had other original compositions that felt like they were fake instruments that were just totally hokey. There were some moments in the flashback scenes where you're listening to it and you go, wait, this sounds like it was made on just kind of a weirdo synthesis. I don't know. It was not, I didn't get why they had some stuff recorded with an orchestra and some stuff sounded like some knockoff thing.
Money.
Yeah.
I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at that point, then why not just reuse the original tracks? That would have at least...
Seriously.
If you only had one choice, why re-record the old ones that you already have just to have them sound cleaner and better versus having shitty sounding, crappy sounding.
How dare you?
That's how I feel now.
Yeah. The other things for me that just... I know you liked Olivia Hussey. I appreciate what she's doing, but I just don't think that the acting is great from anybody in the flashbacks.
I don't know. I just see...
I get
that
it.
clip that we watched of Olivia Hussey just going, boy, girl, I know. It's so good, Deb. She's so good.
Here's the thing. I think what it is it's wrapped in the wrong packaging.
Yeah.
Like the look of those scenes is too aesthetically kind of clean or whatever.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like the right visual for that performance most of the time. The orange water, what the fuck was it called?
Orange hip water.
Yeah. That scene aesthetically feels right to me.
Yeah. That really, we didn't mention, that was a pretty amazing close-up shot of just going down her neck.
Yes. So that kind of stuff felt right. But by and large, most of the movie feels like we're in too clean of a world for the content that's going on. So what I would reference as a touchstone for doing it right is Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Like the house and the aesthetic of Carrie and the way her mom behaves and the way that movie is frenetically shot during the freakouts. It's very much the same basic shit, right?
Yeah.
It's a fucking nutso mom abusing the shit out of her kid and like locking her in a closet and making her life miserable. I felt like I needed more of that level to match with us getting on board with where we know the movie goes and where we know the story came from.
I think...
So not having that, I just was like, this feels made for TV.
For me, like, Olivia Hussey just elevated any of that. Like, just, it didn't matter. But I feel you, because where I really felt that was in, like, that first murder scene or whatever with the younger girl.
Yeah.
And just looking at it, I'm like, oh, this is cool, the colors and stuff. And I kind of like, again, like the pacing, but it did look too clean. I can't think of a different way to put it. Something about the visual aesthetic.
It's a hard one too, because in a way you think there's a reason they made everything clean, because we're going back to this time that's quote unquote cleaner and the house is newer and the paint is drier, whatever. So yes, but that doesn't mean you need to shoot it.
Right.
To look clean.
Right.
Right? Like everything can be clean and still feel dark and gritty.
Ironically, that clean, it's funny how that's I wonder if that comes from something that's lower. Like that clean I associate with kind of cheap, lower budget, yet it's clean, which you'd think is supposed to be something from higher budget. So it's whatever that sort of falseness that is coming through maybe more when it's low budget in a way.
Yes. It's part of it's
things are just
how
not
things are
shot
lit.
as well and lit as well and a little more rushed. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's lens choice. There are times when it feels good, like those close-ups. There's sort of a macro thing going on.
Yeah,
and, that then you start go, ooh, there's style, there's something happening. But it's the basicness of shooting a lot of the coverage.
Yeah,
I think that makes us go, okay.
That first scene or that first killing scene too of the younger girl. I said I already said what I liked a few times, the pacing, and I liked. Henry Thomas as Norman and dressed up as the dress and kind of seeing that for the first time. But this is where it was kind of hit or miss for me, the original score being used, like depending on the moment. Like I do like how this is sort of the same screenwriter. It's a bookend to the original, where the other two Psycho sequels had their own original score that was way outside of the Bernard Herrmann score. This one's the only one to bring it back. And I thought that was cool. It made sense, and it mostly worked for me. It's like, okay, this is the bookending kind of thing, or we're reflecting back on this first ghost, yada, yada. But there's something about that first when he's stabbing her and the music is playing, where kind of like where you were saying about the others, where it was like maybe tipping into haven't we been here before? This was the one moment in like all the sequels where I did just kind of shrug a little bit, feeling like, yeah, he's stabbing her and the Psycho theme's playing. I've already, been here, done that, And it was a little, and as I said, a little different and fun because it's him dressed as Norman, seeing it as that young self for the first time. But, and it was in color. But I don't know, it just felt a little,
I think there's a problem.
Part of the cheapness of just put on the music.
Yeah, I think it's hindered by the lack of story context or metaphor in the moment. Like the kill happens just kind of in a room. It's Norma's room and it's at the end of her bed, but like there's no intrigue to that, where they are and how the killing happens. Most of the kills in all of the Psycho movies have very specific, it's in this location for a reason, and the location matters.
There wasn't a lot,
and it's just her in the middle of a room. Yeah, it's like, who gives a shit? If you're gonna do it, I think if you're gonna be in that room,
have her be something. Have her be at the foot of the bed, and it's like the mother corpse is looming over her. Have her be on the corpse. Have her fall back into the closet.
Yes,
do something.
I think in the bed or in the closet makes it meaningful.
Yeah.
Kind of just at the end of the bed in the, kind of, it's middling.
Even if she was at the end of the bed, then shoot it in such a way where we feel the
make it mean
repercussions of the location.
Right, make it mean something in the greater context, and so that there's an added layer of importance to this.
I feel like
the closet would be cool, right? Because she's come in and she's looking for Norman, and she doesn't know the house.
Yeah.
So that's fun to be with the character who doesn't know where they are or where
waltzing around, just walks right into the mother's room.
So I think I could conceive of it in if she gets to the point where she finds that it's a corpse and she flips out and she turns around and Norman has closed the door to get out of the room. The only place she's going to look to go to is another door.
Yeah.
And to have her try to escape through the closet is a real oh fuck, and have him come up behind, and then he gets to get his first kill in the place that he was tortured.
Yeah.
And then you go, there's sort of, even subconsciously, there's sort of context and depth and meaning to this first kill. Yeah. It's just a really simple, just think one step further when you're in that moment, and don't just make it bland.
You've hit the nail on the coffin. I think I was trying to say it. I was trying to say maybe it was the music, but that just sort of highlights, I think, what you just said, what wasn't working. Like that's really at the core of it. Like after this big build up, it's supposed to be this big first kill moment or whatever. It's
I would love to see, because this is Norman's recollection. I would love to see that scene unfold that way, where she ends up in the closet, but even in her running to the closet, she's just discovered the corpse, and like you have a shot of Norman coming at her, and like the corpse is now miraculously like sitting up or something, and it's like distorted, and Norman can even like acknowledge that it's there.
Yeah,
right. He's in the mother mode, but there's the corpse right
have
there.
Have it move off camera. That would be cool.
Yeah, have some of that. So it's even more just, it would like, we're sort of seeing that scene through the eyes of the girl getting killed. So she's seeing all of this.
Yeah.
She's just flip out central, right? That's what, then the music feels right.
Yeah.
If you get all of that shit going on and suddenly it's, that theme comes in, you're like, oh, yeah, this is really what Psycho is.
Right.
So it just feels, the way it is too medium.
Yeah,
it's real bland.
It makes it, and then when you have that original music, it just, you're only thinking how it pales in comparison.
Yeah.
Even to the sequels, which had different music. We didn't mention, maybe for good reason, I don't know, but Henry Thomas's performance.
That was my last thing.
It's a mixed bag for me.
Yep, very much so.
He's great as like good casting. I wouldn't say great, I'd say good.
Yeah.
Good casting to be not Norman Bates as we met him in Psycho, but someone who I buy as when he's in like total introvert mode, like afraid to speak, at all.
He has that reluctance and sort of like trepidatious persona.
Like, you see there's observing the world, like you see the gears turning in his head, you see him so desperate to like try to just want to be normal and figure things out. Normal Norman.
I just part of it is maybe I'm nuts about this shit, but like hair matters to me. And like his hair just feels like 1990. I'm like, dude, I'm trying to be convinced that this is a kid in 1950 or whatever.
Well, it wasn't his hair so much that threw me off. I thought, as far as being that kind of introvert, understated, blah, 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 like even when he's watching his mother die and you just see all this internal stuff going on was good.
Yeah.
But I just wanted some kind of little more like escalation or just some kind of thread to follow him. Like if he's holding himself in this whole time, like show me that that's what he's doing kind of more and more, until I wanted some kind of like, what was the straw break moment? Like we know contextually, like story wise, what, is like something with Chet coming along, but I felt like I missed on whatever, like, oh, there's him now deciding to be even more, or here's him going past another kind of like marker in his craziness of deciding to kill him.
I think it's supposed to be when he spies on Chet and his mother in the motel, but it doesn't really land.
Yeah.
I think that's supposed to be the moment where it's like now he's really like crossed over.
I think if a key part of Norman's character we've seen is he leaves his insecurities behind in how he carries himself whenever he's embraced that killer side or is sort of in full extrovert mode in a kind of very comfortable in his own skin way. I wanted to see when is the first time he became like Norman in his own skin,
Right.
It just, that's the moment I wanted we didn't get. Like, I don't know. It could have been like even just, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what the solve for that is.
Yeah,
it's just
but you see what I mean?
Better something.
Yeah,
I don't know what.
Just seeing that, give him a little something more.
There's my only last real thing is very small, but there's a disconnect I feel with the costuming in the flashbacks. That I don't really know what to take away from it, but like if Norman is being dressed up in these very marmish, dresses, Norma is never in this movie wearing any of them.
Yeah.
So the leap, this is actually a broader problem I have with the movies in general, except for the first one, with the sequels in general, is that the depictions of Norma and this idea that she was quite young when he killed her do not match with the clothing that he wears when he's being her.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to make it
I feel like that could have been the perfect opportunity to sort of address that, is to see she's, younger. She's probably like 40, but like wearing these dresses. Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, but we can't put Olivia Hussey in that because Olivia Hussey is hot.
That's so lame.
You know what I mean? That's what it felt
So
like to me. And
lame.
I'm like, well, no, make it work.
Yeah.
Put her in those fucking things. She'll be
in
fine.
both. Like she can.
Yeah.
Just see her in that once, And I think that we only get her in that when it's the funeral, which is like, of course, that's when she.
Right. So it's just like a thread that feels wrong.
Yeah, it's been
never quite worked
because they
me.
like tried to address it in this one too, with as far as just her age thing being like, there's a line Norman has of, in my mind, she kept getting older, which that was enough for me. So that plus, okay, let's see her actually in these clothes, and that she was this person who was so stuck up and tight, school marmish, like you said.
Yeah,
would have done it.
Just never connects. So, and then. In the costuming thing, the first time we see Norman in this movie, the young Norman in this movie, he's wearing denim on denim that matches, which is a big no-no. I just can't get behind it. I'm all about wearing denim on denim. Don't get me wrong. Wear it. Do it. But have all the denim be different.
I like the kind of suit denim look.
I bet you do. I bet you do.
I did not bet that you don't. I'm surprised, Tim. Next section. Anything else?
On that note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different denim, according to Tim.
How dare you?
Okay. Next section. Last big section. Things of note. Things of note!
This should be interesting.
So you already heard from talking. It was shot at Universal Studios, Florida.
Makes sense.
When the park first opened.
Ooh.
So they were actually, and sort of the sense that you got from hearing some of the people behind the scenes was that Universal cared way more about just getting this original Psycho house up at their Florida location than the movie itself. And actually they were excited. They were kind of like, did whatever they have to do, Universal, to get it so that they were still filming when the park first opened. So, like the scene,
it's all a PR grab.
Yeah,
fuck that.
Exactly. So the scene where he's out there like hitting the blanket or the rug and like dusting it.
Oh yeah.
There was apparently like 50 people behind a police line, tourists, watching the scene get shot.
Unacceptable.
Right. And that was some other things though. I watched all the special features on the Blu-ray we rented, and one of the first documentaries was Making of Mother with Tony Gardner, so the special effects makeup person. Another unique Florida thing. I'm just trying to hit all the Florida things. That gelatin was ruled out as a special effects makeup thing. He's the one who built all the bodies, which is something you normally use because they'd melt in Florida.
Oh shit.
So it's just interesting. Oh, this as far as little things you don't think of. Also, like they did give the studio a lot of credit. They had as many of the original props shipped from LA to that Florida Psycho house, including that is the original bed. That is the bed from the first Psycho, which they insured for $100,000.
Okay.
Yeah, that was cool as far as the Psycho, as far as the
So I have a
Florida
question
stuff.
then. When I was a kid, it would have been 1989, I believe. I lived in California. We went down to Universal Hollywood or whatever, Universal City, the one in LA, and did the tour. And I think my recollection is that when we drove up to the house in the tour, that they did pyrotechnics and like had flames coming out of the windows as part of the tour.
You know, Tim, how about for our last Psycho episode next week, you dig into the history of the Psycho house as an attraction, maybe. Okay. Actually, there was a documentary that someone made that's on the Psycho house, so I'll probably do that myself.
Cool.
But short, I don't know.
I think my memory is right, which then made me think at the end of this,
burning it down.
that they used the Hollywood one for the final burn down. Mm-hmm. And then that when I saw it 8 years later, that's the version in the Hollywood one that we were being shown.
Florida. They were also I think Anthony Perkins and whoever is involved in that, I guess everyone, that last scene where it's all burning up, they were not expecting the flames to be that big or that intense.
Ooh.
And they put that on because they were at the time more inexperienced Florida pyrotechnic people who didn't have as much experience as the Hollywood crews.
That's funny. The other thing I like about just that I think is interesting is that this movie, the fourth one, premiered on Showtime.
Yeah. So we
that's pretty interesting. Like,
maybe we didn't clarify, but when we said it was made for TV, we meant that literally.
Yes, but also that
it had international, though, theatrical premieres or screens.
It's still not like, it's not basic. It's not like made for TV.
It's different.
It's Showtime. It's still a movie.
Yeah.
Like a movie. I don't know. It's an interesting middle ground.
Right. It's like
at the
Showtime.
Time, like, what the fuck was Showtime doing?
You have shows that feel better budget and quality. So why not the movie?
But also that when it was aired, it was hosted by Janet Leigh. Mm-hmm. That's fucking great. I wonder what she thought of it.
Wait, she hosted what?
So when it was first aired, November 10th, 1990.
Yeah. So it was part of a Psycho retrospective.
Yeah.
And this was like a new Psycho movie as part of a retrospective, which is kind of interesting in itself.
Yeah. So I would love to see her, like, whatever the cutaways to her during that retrospective. That'd be pretty sweet. I wonder if it's findable.
Be fun to know what she thought of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did listen to the commentary on this film.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's how I'm getting a lot of this or have a sense of it all. So that was with Mick Garris and Olivia Hussey and Henry Thomas.
Oh, nice.
Young Norman Bates. So another cool thing about this film is it did have Hilton Green as executive producer. So he's the one who worked his way up basically from
the AD.
Yeah, from original whatever AD on the first one.
That's cool.
To producing the sequels. Executive producer on the fourth quill. So you had that continuity stare for this one. Olivia Hussey talking about this movie now is so funny, or whenever they record this commentary a few years ago, it's like she doesn't remember anything. Like whenever they ask, I don't remember.
Oh my.
I just can't, because I would just, and she also kept saying her other.
She's real method.
Yeah, exactly. That's what she said. She said, I would just get in there and do it. I didn't remember all the people there behind the line, because once you're doing the lines, you're just doing, but then she also would say her kind of repeated refrain was just like, oh God, can you imagine a mother? I have two sons, a mother doing this to her sons. It's just unbearable. How could, she just kind of was really put off by the context. And because of that, she said the one scene that she did remember really clearly was that when she's essentially rolling on the floor with Henry.
And he's getting a real boner in real life.
Yeah, probably.
Can you fucking imagine?
Shooting that being an
Henry
18-year-old Henry Thomas and shooting out Olivia Hussey. And she kept saying though, oh, I'm so sorry, Henry, and I can't stop thinking of my own sons. How horrible! Just how horrible!
Get over it, Olivia.
She has.
You're
It's great.
A fucking actor.
So it was just funny after this whole commentary of her not remembering anything, remembering that. And then later we did get, and I watched the portion on. There's a documentary, The Psycho Legacy. I watched just the Psycho 4 section for this one, where she talks about what did bring her in originally for this, what got her to perk up and say, I want to do this, was knowing that Joseph Stefano, the original screenwriter, was coming back for this one.
Nice.
If you're wondering kind of how and why she did this. Henry just said that he spent the summer watching the original Psycho and imitating Anthony Perkins. That was his kind of take on it.
Okay.
But once he actually met Anthony Perkins, you kind of think, here's the other person playing the role, and for the first time, and what sort of advice and Anthony Perkins, the man himself, going to give him. And he said it wasn't much. He kind of seemed like Anthony Perkins felt weird or like didn't have much he actually wanted to say. He said something like, I don't know what to tell you aside from just stay in your body, don't jump out of the lines because the lines are in the character's in there. You don't have to emulate me. He was basically just saying like, be natural, don't mess it up. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yes, that's
do a good job.
That's fair advice.
Yeah.
Don't suck.
And then Henry Thomas said of his performance, he was just basically focused the whole time. Like his motivation was not wanting to get caught by Mother. You know, maybe that's more just for those scenes of when he's bringing in the woman.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear. So Mick Garris too. He had only directed. He's done like a lot of the Stephen King adaptations, but he had only done Critters 2 at this point.
Right.
And so Anthony Perkins...
Have I seen Critters 2? I think I have.
At some point. Sure. Anthony Perkins wanted the job. He wanted to direct this.
Well, fucking they should have let him.
Right?
Because 2 is awesome.
Right? No, 3 is
the
awesome. One that he did.
Yeah, come on.
And just whatever other continuity that would have led to could have been awesome. But because that... was a commercial and critical failure, they said, nope, sorry, Anthony Perkins. But just like, again, what could have been.
Yeah.
Mick Garris, he's a great guy, just kind of safe in a lot of ways, I think.
No shit.
Filmmaking wise.
I have a thing of note.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Letterboxd, and the ad that pops up is for Ritz crackers, because we've been talking about when we talked about Ritz crackers for 3.
Weird.
Like the internet or whatever.
It heard us talking about Ritz crackers.
It wants me to be more like Norman.
That's weird, Tim.
It really is.
I mean, we've all had that in our lives. Now we're talking about something and then Ritz crackers. So there was that contention then between Anthony Perkins, who wanted to direct it, and Mick Garris, where Mick Garris, was kind of testing him, which you can kind of get though. He wanted to direct it. But the sort of some examples of contention points that Mick Garris gave that was interesting, like the one where it's like, oh God, like Mick Garris said something about, okay, well, we're trying to, avoid camp here. And then that just would kind of set him off, where he'd go, well, what do you mean by that? Camp. Define camp. What exactly do you mean by that? And he said that then Anthony Perkins would just go on this like 40-minute diatribe all about like, what does it mean? What does camp even mean, kind of thing.
Oh my God.
Which is like, maybe just as, coming from, he's the guy who made Psycho 3 and
I guess.
But that kind of, something like that. Yeah, things like that would happen. And then the bigger example too, mentioned in the movie, him tearing apart the apple with his bare hands.
Yeah.
That was originally him just, thrusting a knife down into a cutting block or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Which, Anthony Perkins, even after him and Mick Garris went through, spent going through the script line by line together, but for whatever reason, he waited for being on set to say to Mick Garris while they were setting up the shot, "What, isn't this a little typical? Like, can't we do, is a little familiar?" And Mick Garris said he kind of liked it, but let's get off the set and you and I talk it out, let them finish setting it up. And that's when they came up with a compromise, which Mick Garris said he actually did like a lot better.
Cool.
Which was, splitting an apple with his hands. Anthony Perkins, apparently, he was like the drivers and workers, like he talked to them about the theme park. Like he was super interested in the theme park itself and kind of like what the attractions were. And he'd ask questions like, what do you think was like the point of this attraction? Or like, what do people get from it? Like really interested and kind of just a level that you don't really think about as theme park attractions.
Man, sounds like a real rabble rouser.
Yeah. Hilton Green, the original producer, only ever referred to Alfred Hitchcock as Mr. Hitchcock. Anthony Perkins referred to him as Hitch, and said, he pointed out one thing I liked. Remember the actor who came, or the actor who played the neighbor in the fourth one, who comes by and says whatever. Anthony Perkins said of him or her, Hitch would have loved this actor. Seems super Hitchcocky, like good casting, guys. Olivia Hussey. Yeah, forgot everything except for that main scene. She didn't remember she did nudity. There's that one shot of her in the motel room.
And she's like, oh my.
In the commentary, she's like, I don't remember doing that. My son saw this film. In real life, she's agoraphobic, and she's been on medication for it, but she said that until recently, meditation has helped her the most with her agoraphobia. Cool. And now it's just something that like kind of flares up occasionally before being so debilitating as before.
Very in line with the character, I feel.
It sounds like Olivia Hussey and Henry Thomas both, they liked Psycho 2, but not 3. So just more kind of people not liking the Anthony Perkins one.
I really like 3.
I learned about Psycho 2. The production withheld the last 2 pages, so the production didn't know what they're shooting.
That's cool.
Psycho 2. Mick Garris, the director, and his brother, who passed away a few years after the filming of this, are the firemen walking away at the beginning. Cool. At the end. Lonely Indians, but Henry Thomas talking about. Oh yeah, I already said that. Yeah, you didn't have anything else?
No.
There was lastly, from Joseph Stefano, I thought this was really interesting. Any connections to the original, and especially Hitchcock himself? Like is sort of our maybe measure of how canonical can we make this? I mean, it's Psycho 4, so it's all canon or whatever, but it gets muddied when it's like they kind of retcon the middle ones. Anyway, this was an interview during the release of this one in 1990. Joseph Stefano said, quote, this was cool. Hitch was interested in what I had to offer. He's talking about the original Psycho. Hitch was interested in what I had to offer, like one of my background ideas for Norman's upbringing. I imagined a scene which people recognize from Psycho 4. Here Norman is horsing around with his mother. When she notices he has an erection, she becomes rabid to teach him once and for all he's not supposed to do that. She forces him to put on a dress, smears lipstick on his face, and locks him in a closet. The incident has no place in Psycho, but I told Hitch anyway, and he was fascinated, very curious about things of that nature, Freudian psychological backgrounds. So an official scene that was conceived during the writing of the original Psycho finally saw the light of day in Psycho 4, and presumably Hitchcock was into that idea, and that is like as background approved by the man himself.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's about it.
Cool, dude.
All right.
We did it.
Great. All right. Anything else on Psycho 4?
I think we can move on to the original.
Great.
Safely.
Well, as far as then how about we aren't doing that, Tim, because we're still in this episode and we have RecommenDEADtions to do.
Well, yeah.
Do you want to give a recommendation?
I do. I really like, and I've watched it a couple times, and it's one of these more recent movies that I am compelled to kind of go back to. Called it's weird. It's sort of a weird meta-y remake, but it's the remake of. How do I explain this? It's called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Do you know it?
I recognize it. No.
So in 1976, there's a pseudo documentary. It's a fake documentary called The Town That Dreaded Sundown. And it's. I actually can't remember if I've seen the 76 version. I think I have. And it's about a slasher, like a guy who wears like a hood over his head and like kills teenagers who are making out in their cars. But it's shot as a documentary. So it's cool. It's got this weird 70s vibe to it.
Creepy.
But the remake is not a remake. It's a continuation about the same town that the documentary was shot in. And somebody is now doing the same thing that the documentary was faux documentizing. And so in modern day... in the town where the fake documentary was filmed, somebody is doing a copycat of what the documentary was talking about.
That's a cool way to update it.
It's very like it's cool, but it's really fucking good. The lead girl, I can't remember her name, but is great. There are definitely people you recognize, and it's a fun romp. It's got kind of a Scream vibe to it too, so it's I don't know if you call that meta exactly, or it's just sort of, it's self-referential. It's cool. It's a fun one.
Only be made now.
Yeah,
What's it called again?
The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
Great.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, I mean, I don't have a whole lot. I was watching some of the Val Lewton movies on Shudder. I've been watching, on Criterion. Watching some other stuff on Criterion. But I guess, you know what, Tim? I saw it yesterday. It's sat with me. It's affected me. I'll recommend Dead. I'm gonna go ahead and, I guess, by this firmly put myself in the camp of saying I liked Joker.
Okay. I saw that you watched it.
Yeah. I hearted it.
Yep.
It was, I'd say if you are into the idea of an extremely nihilistic horror film, which I was not expecting. So it kind of took me a while to kind of like wrap my head around. Yeah, granted, I didn't know what I was walking into, but I was not expecting what I got, which was cool.
Okay.
But it took me a while to kind of like digest it and sort of settle on like a kind of thing. But like, man, was it affecting. And then I thought of it just hearing you talk about how you you just love getting in the nitty gritty details of seeing someone work something out as far as where, you know, their origin story, I guess.
Sure.
This for me, this was like a Marvel movie origin story, except it actually showed all the interesting parts you never see.
That's cool.
And as I said, it was extremely, nihilistic horror movie, like, which I wasn't expecting. Like, I felt more akin, like, to, I had just watched Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer. Yeah. Something like that. But you also had this lens going on where you kept getting reminded, it's in Gotham City. So it allowed this just separateness in the 70s. Yeah. So
yeah, I'm very curious because being a comic book
it felt like
fan to see how that is bridged.
If we've just been evolving filmically where Dark Knight was putting it more in the direction of realism, more in it, this is the one that goes fully like into it. Like you can't do typical superheroes like in this world that they've made. Like it's so
Can I ask you a question without you saying it? You can just nod to me. But is Batman in it? All right.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I could ramble longer, but I don't know what I want to say else about it right now. But
maybe I should go see that tomorrow.
It's playing. I saw it matinee at 2:00 at the Vista. And it was crowded.
I bet.
It's like, what are you going
I was at a open mic the other day playing a little music, and a guy got up and like, you know, you have like your 5 minutes and whatever.
Yeah.
And he got up and he was like, "Yeah, man, this is a little weird, but I just saw Joker, and I think it's really an important movie, actually. Like, we need to talk about mental health more."
Yeah.
And like, I guess I can't remember, I'm not going to recite what he said, but he kind of dove in briefly about that as a topic and art and the overlapping of those two things. And then he played a song that was kind of about that. Not about Joker, but about like focusing more on like being, you know, conscientious of what mental health and the importance of treating it and like the
importance of having resources behind it and not taking someone immediately off of their meds and all that stuff.
And not trivializing somebody who is suffering from it because you don't understand, you know, what it means to have a mental health thing, like depression. It's like the big analogy I always make. It's like when somebody breaks their fucking leg, you don't just go, you'll be fine. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
Like just, you know, pull yourself up. It's like your fucking leg is broken. Your brain is the same.
Right.
And we just don't treat it that way. And we need to.
And I'm very excited to talk to you about this film yet because there's scenes where it's like, it feels like it's, you know, explicit commentary on that, pointing that out. Yeah. But then you realize, no, it's not though. It like, I don't know, this film, I just, if the controversy didn't actually have a sense of exactly what the controversy
I'm still trying to figure it out too. Like
now that I've seen it, I'm kind of going back and actually trying to try to parse it all out. But if it's that they said that the film was kind of really taking a stance in like one way. That's right to say I felt like I was watching a different movie. If the film only seemed concerned about like feelings and like what is the emotional state of this person at any given time.
Yeah.
Like it really didn't seem like there was nothing heavy-handed because it wasn't handing anything.
Sure.
It was just this story.
Well, I mean, like we're watching the Psycho movies. It's fucking relevant.
I think that's why.
And I think this is what when we said we were going to do this as a series, it's kind of what we want to get back to when we watch the original, and like how does the original play to our sensibilities in 2019.
And this was a boy and his mother's
in the world.
This is a boy and his mother's story for 2019.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
So, cool, dude.
Let's talk about it on or off air, Tim.
When I see it soon. Go see it.
Well, in the meantime,
Ryan just exploded my ears. Thank you.
If you were looking for an excuse to watch the original Psycho again, we're watching that as a way to wrap up these 4 Psycho films.
How could you not?
Yeah. So Tim and I will be watching that, and you should join us for seeing whatever the heck we do have to talk about. This is our first time, as we've said before, doing a sort of already much talked about film.
Halloween special.
It's exactly Tim and Ryan's Halloween special, Dismembering Horror.
I'm going to just wear a fucking jack-o'-lantern on my head the whole time.
And I'll wear a spooky ghost costume, Tim.
Just a sheet.
Yeah, spooky. Or goblin. I don't know. We'll see. And we'll finally reveal at the end of the next episode why I started our first episode on the Psycho movies on Psycho 2 referring to Tim as Moonlight Tim.
Figure it out.
And but until then, you can find us at dismemberinghorror.com.
Also on Instagram, Dismembering Horror.
You can find us on iTunes and leave us a review there.
Yeah.
You'll find yourself opening up iTunes. You find yourself navigating to Dismembering Horror. You're saying, hey, I think this really deserves 5 stars. And I'm going to say a nice few words on it too. And oh, look, in that time you've already done it. Thank you.
Wow. So nice
thanks for leaving us a review. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. That's it.
All right.
You know the rest.
Until next time, then. Thank you for listening.
We will see you next time. Goodbye.